Life as we know it in modern America would not be possible without energy. Switching on the lights, commuting to work, traveling to your favorite destination, using life-saving devices like heart monitors. American-made energy is the cleanest, most efficient way to produce the energy we need for today's world.
We create global stabilization through our energy, and we do it in a prideful, clean, and effective way. People want to talk about our environment. It's so funny. The East Coast people and the West Coast people want to talk about the environment, and yet look around. It's beautiful here, and yet we're producing energy. We know how to take care of our environment. We don't need these guys that they've never lived or worked where we do to come in and start telling us how to do it. So we're creating jobs. Our community loves it. And at the same time, we can create global stabilization, because when we take us off the market, when you take our fossil fuels off the market, you start allowing Iran, you start allowing Russia, you start allowing OPEC to control the market, and that creates global destabilization. The lifeblood of our economy isn't our cheap labor. It's our dependency and reliability on our energy. The ability for us to be able to have reliable, low-cost energy is what gives us a hand up against the rest of the world that has cheap labor. But we have reliable energy. It's the lifeblood. It's like the blood pumping through our vein. Energy is the blood pumping through the economy. And without reliable energy, you can't have a reliable economy. And we provide that. We provide that. In rural parts of America, that's what we provide.
And the energy sector commonly provides jobs that are labor intensive and can be very good paying jobs that draw from that American work ethic that you'll find in the rural communities of our nation. And Louisiana, certainly no exception to that. So I have a lot of agriculture and a lot of energy in my district, oil and gas, offshore and onshore. And of course, the southwestern section of Louisiana is the epicenter of LNG for the entire nation. So I have a beautiful, very interesting, culturally deep district, and energy is a cornerstone for economic prosperity, has been for a long time in South Louisiana.
Here, we are fortunate in America to have great, vast energy reserves. The technology we developed has allowed us to tap those energy reserves and bring it to market affordably. And so we don't have to worry about foreign governments and relying on foreign governments for our own energy. We have from Alaska to California even, throughout the Intermountain West, to Texas, North Dakota, and South Dakota. The amount of energy that's just there can fuel our country and run our country. So we are independent and self-dependent on our own energy, so we don't have to worry about being dependent on others.
Energy independence actually serves all of America, not just the western states, but all of America, because it means that we're energy independent. That means we don't have to rely on our adversaries overseas. It means that we can produce energy and lower energy costs. All the above means that we can have all kinds of energy, that no one's picking winners or losers. And also we recognize that when we're energy independent here in the US, that has a geopolitical outlook and effect overseas with our partners. It also means that we can help our partners overseas reduce their emissions. I'd say the other part that I think is really interesting and motivates a lot of Republicans is that the technology that we're developing here in the United States can be then exported. And think about this, 90% of the emissions in the next 10 years, 90% will be coming from developing nations, not the United States. So only when we get to net zero, we still have other nations we need to be concerned about global climate change. And exporting that technology is going to be able to lower those costs, bring better quality of life to people in developing nations, and that just has a geopolitical effect. certain states and regions are blessed with whatever they've got. Like in the Pacific Northwest, there's a lot of hydro. In the Great Plains areas, the wind blows. In Wyoming, the wind blows a special way and generates a lot of different kinds of energy from the wind, but maybe it's not so great for solar. So we need to recognize that energy generation is very much regional, really localized, and we need to use that energy as much as we can. That makes us, again, energy independent. It makes us be able to lower costs. Super important. So when you're thinking about different areas of, if you have nuclear, if you have coal, if you have natural gas, using what's available to you. And not all states have that flexibility to have a variety of choices. They're not blessed in that way, but there are a lot of states that then can create that energy and export it to other states. We are on an interconnected grid, which means that when something's not working well in Idaho, you can import that energy from Utah or Colorado or Montana. So having that flexibility and having all that energy online provides reliability, affordability, and I don't know anyone who doesn't want the power on.
It serves America in many ways. Number one, it provides us with reliable, low-cost, efficient, and energy that's getting cleaner every day. And we need to continue working on solutions to make all of our fuel sources cleaner sources of energy. We also have a lot of hydropower in the West. We're here in Tulsa, where we're along the McClellan-Kerr navigation system of the Arkansas River that runs through my district. And there's a lot of hydropower developed off of the Arkansas River, but there's even more that could be developed. We could put 12,000 megawatts of additional power on existing dams in this country, but the left doesn't want to put any more hydropower in. They're talking about tearing out dams. We could use nuclear power to generate carbon-free energy, but the left doesn't want to talk about nuclear power. It just seems to be an attack on energy and an attack on the American people and giving our wealth and our sovereignty to foreign countries like China.
But one of the real benefits of hydropower is that it creates lakes that are used for drinking water, for recreation, flood control, but also for the generation of electricity. It's, of course, a zero carbon emission and is dispatchable. And as Jonathan mentioned, when you talk about renewables, because it is a renewable resource, not everybody recognizes it as such, but it is zero carbon emission. But it's dispatchable. In other words, it can be dispatched when needed to take up the slack for other renewables or whatever the situation may be to maintain the integrity of the grid.
This dam that we're looking at right here was built in less than 3 years. Their efforts to relicense it will probably take at least 10 years. And that's a great example of the kinds of the bureaucratic regulations that we have to go through in order to continue receiving the benefits of our own domestic energy sources. We see that in the Pacific Northwest as well, with all of the dams that we have, the nuclear regulatory issues, the coal, the oil, the gas, the permitting that's required. It really hamstrings our ability to fully realize the benefits of our energy.
My colleagues in Congress that are deep patriots and represent districts that have significant oil and gas energy sector, or they just get it. You know, they understand that our entire world, the ecological balance of our world depends upon American energy exploration, extraction, refining, and production and delivery. They get it that the cornerstone of our national economic prosperity will be based upon efficient, abundant, and affordable energy. And they understand that our future generations depend upon what we do now as a nation regarding energy. So the Western Caucus is certainly cognizant of the realities of 21st century America, and they understand that the decisions we make now as a nation will impact us as time unfolds.
Western Caucus remains an important institution within the House of Representatives of the United States Senate. It started with 4 members from 4 large states that banded together to fight back against federal government interference. You know, the dictates from Washington to the West about how they should live their life. So they got together and started it 28 years ago, and it has grown. It's now 60+ members. Not only is it members of the House of Representatives from just the West, from all across the country. Rural America has banded together with the Western Caucus to fight against Washington overlord about how one lives their life in the West, how they work, how they recreate, what they do, because so much of the land in rural and Western America are dictated by the federal government, by the federal government ownership of land, by rules and regulations, the laws they pass. The bureaucrats in DC who tell them what to do, the coastal elites, like to tell the West and rural America how to live their lives. So this organization is the organization that pushes back against that, pushes back for the people that get up, go to work every day, worry about their family, you know, want to have an enjoyable weekend, want to live their life without government interference. So that's the people who are here fighting for them every day in Congress and around the country, in the House and the Senate, basically saying, no, we represent these people.
In all of the developed countries around the world, from the period of January 18 through June of 19, we reduced the amount of coal-fired generation by 9 gigawatts. So we were really excited that we had done that. In that same time period, China brought online 41 gigawatts of new coal-fired generation, and they had permitted 125 new gigawatts of coal. So sitting here and thinking that we can do this just in the U.S. and not do it globally makes absolutely no sense. Here in the U.S., we've reduced it because gas has been cheaper, because we've learned to get gas out of the ground cheaper. And that is one of the great tools that we have here in the U.S. We've reduced in the U.S., we've reduced our CO2 emissions by 33%, and 40% of that reduction was on the backs of natural gas. 30% of that reduction was on the backs of renewables. This is at the consumption level. That's where the consumer decides to use the energy. Only 17% of that is consumed as electricity. So most people, when they think about electricity, they think about wind power generation, they think about electric generation, because that's all in the talk. The truth is only 17% is actually consumed as electricity. So thinking that we're going to be able to take all of this on by only with just renewables just is not accurate, and we've got to set our sights bigger than that. In fact, in the IEA, which is the International Energy Agency, in their kind of policy-driven case, in other words, they're assuming that the developed countries of the world instill difficult policy around carbon emissions. Even with that, by 2040, still 70% of the nation's energy would still be fossil fuels. And that's because so much of it is really hard to take out. Of direct-fired industrial applications, it's really hard to do that with electricity. In fact, even in the lowest cost electric in areas, it's still 4 times more expensive. Not because the electricity is so much more expensive, but because taking that energy and converting it into these applications is just not very feasible. So again, natural gas is where we can really attack that by lowering the amount of carbon within those fossil fuels. Today, our existing infrastructure in the U.S., our ability to take advantage of it, the U.S. today consumes 25% of the world's natural gas. That's pretty amazing when you think about all the energy around the world, that 25%. And the reason that it is because we have the most expansive natural gas transmission network of anywhere in the world. If you look at a pipeline map, you realize the opportunity. So when we start thinking about other forms of energy like hydrogen, and if you start thinking about having excess power developed from renewables, Southern California, tremendous amount of solar capacity, but you've reached the point where there's a lot of times where it's excess. West Texas, a lot of times where it's excess power. Converting that into hydrogen and then using the existing infrastructure that we have today is a great tool for us, and we have to remember that we can't continue to stop being able to build pipelines, because those grids are what enable us to get that low-cost energy to the consumer. So I would just say, from a Williams standpoint, we see so much opportunity around taking advantage of the innovation we have in the energy industry, setting some clear goals by policy, and making sure that our markets remain open to the very best solutions available. If we can do that, we have proven our ability to go and win as American businesses, and as long as the rules are clear, as long as the market's open, we will win again.
Do you know under what President Biden just rolled out yesterday? You know, hey, 50% reductions based on 2005 baseline levels by 2030. 2030 is 8.5 years from now. 50% baseline. So let's talk about what that means to Americans, to our economy, to our way of life, but also to the environment. So if you were to do that, now, good luck trying, you would literally have to shut down every coal plant in America. And Carol surely knows what that impact would mean. Good luck with that vote when Joe Manchin has to cast that vote in the United States Senate to shut down every coal plant. Doesn't mean coal isn't made. What it means is, go look at China. China's building new coal plants. So let's say coal's being burned. Now, if it's being burned in America versus China, you're probably emitting 3 times more carbon to burn that same coal in China, because we actually have good environmental standards. They love beating up on America. All they do every day is wake up and America's a racist country, America's a horrible country, America destroys the planet. It's a lie. All of that is a lie. Sure, we can always do better. We are doing better. We're doing better with the people at this table, with the industries that are American made. And so if you're going to make stuff, steel is going to get made. Now, where is it going to get made? It should be the question we're all asking these people that say, hey, shut America down to save the planet. If that's what you think you're doing, steel's getting made where? If it's not made in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, or in Ohio, it's getting made in China, in India, in Brazil. Do you know how much carbon they emit to make the same steel? If you make it in America versus there, if you make it in China or Brazil or India, you're emitting 5 times more carbon. So if you want to save the planet, make the steel in America. You'll have to shut down well over 50% of all of the natural gas plants to achieve Biden's target by 2030 of zero emissions on electricity generation, which means over 80% has to be renewable to generate electricity. 80%. Today, we're less than 20%. In 8.5 years, we're going to do that? Do you really, and everybody's going to get this, you would wreck our economy, but you would also massively increase carbon emissions, because all of this stuff, electric cars, you'd have to have 80% of the cars on the road being electric cars. Today, it's less than 3% of the cars on the road. And again, you still have to charge it. You have to get that power from somewhere. And as Texas saw just recently in Oklahoma, you know, windmills are great. Okay, get as much as you can out of that. But when it freezes, I thought it was global warming. Now you have a freeze in these states. The windmills stop turning, and everybody's scrambling going, where do I get baseload capacity? Well, they had shut down a lot of their traditional coal, natural gas, nuclear. They don't even like nuclear power, and it's a renewable source of energy.
So much of the energy in America comes out of the West, from Texas all the way up to Montana, across the Intermountain West. It is ingrained in a lot of the economies of the West, and the people who work there, they're high-paying jobs. And in addition to that, for years we import most of our energy. We had an energy renaissance, 2011, 2012, that changed the way we get energy out of the ground. It's made it cheaper, it's made it abundant, it's made it affordable, that we don't have to rely on unstable nations around the world.
Energy independence means we are not transferring wealth to nations that do not share our values. It means our allies don't have to transfer wealth to nations that do not share our values. And we saw what happens when America's strong, when America's energy independent. With those two things, I think, go right together, how things happen around the world. And we just really need to make sure that we don't put America at a disadvantage and America's allies at a disadvantage by shutting down this abundant energy resource we have here in America. Well, it's important to Western communities, but it's important to our nation as a whole. One, because it makes energy affordable. I mean, we saw when we were energy dominant before President Biden signed the executive order shutting down the Keystone Pipeline and getting back into the Paris Climate Accords, that we had affordable, abundant energy, which helps our economy. It's less expensive to run our businesses. We don't spend as much on fuel. In Pennsylvania, I can give you a statistic here that's important. The abundance of natural gas in Pennsylvania because of the Marcellus Shale, the abundance of energy saves the average Pennsylvania household $1,100 a year.
The impact of President Biden's decision to cancel the Keystone XL pipeline. It makes absolutely no sense to me, because here's an infrastructure project that's funded not by the taxpayer but by the private sector that generates about $5 million a year of tax revenues for Fallon County. Imagine $5 million every year, virtually in perpetuity. For the state of Montana, it's somewhere between $60 million and $80 million a year. But I know when you have tax revenues coming in, that's one way to protect the taxpayers of Montana from their taxes going up, because we generate revenues here for our counties in our state that can help fund our schools, law enforcement, infrastructure, like making sure the roads get graded and so forth. But with one stroke of the pen on January 20th, the president stopped this project. And I know right here in Fallon County there were pink slips set out to families. These are good paying jobs with good benefits. And so the folks who will suffer from this are hardworking Montanans. Many of you probably remember, some of you are as old as I am or older, remember the days of the 70s when we had the War of Yom Kippur, the Arab oil embargo. Oil prices quadrupled. There were odd and even days you could get gasoline depending on your license plate, the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. And remember, interest rates went up because the inflationary effect of the fact that oil quadrupled in price. We had severe inflation. And if you remember in 1981, visiting farms and ranches or knowing family members that did during those years. I remember those years. I was in high school in Bozeman, just starting school at Montana State, and it just devastated our economy. My kids are now the age of thinking about maybe buying their first home, and they're talking about 2.5% to 3% 30-year fixed mortgages. And I start feeling like the old timers saying, well, back in 1981 it was 18.6%, and these are really low rates. Well, listen, it's because what's happened here, we are energy independent now. We can export energy because we produce more because of American energy innovation. So there's always great benefits associated with infrastructure like that, like the Keystone Pipeline. Of course, the Baker on-ramp here will have about 100,000 barrels a day coming in from North Dakota and Montana. But that oil is going to get moved regardless if this pipeline's installed or not. And if it's not a pipeline, it's going to be by rail or by truck. And the crazy thing about this is that the environmentalists have said, well, this is bad for the environment. No. A pipeline is the most environmentally sound way. It's the safest way to transport a liquid. It actually has lower carbon emissions than rail or by truck.
Energy independence is vitally important to Western communities and people all over the country, actually. It provides jobs, employment, a tremendous amount of investment, but overall, it provides us energy independence from other countries. We can control our future when we have a good supply of energy that we produce right here in the United States of America. So I think it puts us in a very secure place and not subject to the whims and wishes of other countries. It's a tremendous thing that we have the benefits and the resources available to us to be able to have an all-of-the-above type of energy program in this country. And that gives us energy at low costs. It gives us energy on demand at consistent supply that allows our industries, our communities to be able to grow. And that provides good jobs, a bright future for Americans. And the way we do things in this country, better than anywhere else in the world, we do it as environmentally safe as you can, and we're always improving. So I think having our energy sources under our control and at our disposal is the best way forward for this country.
We are a republic of sovereign states, right? We are a union of 50 sovereign states, a representative republic. So states' rights are paramount for the preservation of our freedoms and protections from oppressive tendencies of large government bodies. And America's is in danger of failing that vision that our founders gave birth to 240 years ago, that we would be a nation driven by the people's will and the intent of individual Americans. So the state, the sovereign state, should absolutely primarily be in control of the laws that govern all things that impact their citizenry, including energy production, exploration, extraction, and delivery. So there is a place for federal law and regulation, of course. We are a federalist society. We have a central government, and we have a system that's designed around a balance of powers, and that includes federal power. However, the federal power should never be overwhelming to the rights and freedoms of the state, and that includes energy. I have a word of warning to my brothers and sisters from sea to shining sea. If you live in a state that's beginning to slide towards a toxic legal environment that threatens the cornerstone of your economy, which is American production of energy, deal with it now, because the deeper you go down that path, the more difficult it will be to reverse. And I'm one of those voices for Louisiana. It's why I'm here. And yet it's a hell of a battle.
The state is losing between $60 and $80 million a year in their state coffers. Montana's not a rich state, just a shade over 1 million people. The counties, our county for one, $14 million a year in a county that has 9,500 people. We don't have a lot of opportunity. We don't have a lot of money to spend on infrastructure and the roads. The county roads we drive on in some places are, well, they're a little better than a 2-track trail. No money, and this hurts. It's getting more difficult to keep employees in eastern Montana. Our children are leaving. My son lives in Missoula, 600 miles from where I am. The jobs aren't there. They've been taken away. Good, high-paying jobs. Montana has its own issues, but this Keystone Pipeline needs to get done, folks. There's nothing wrong with it and everything right with it. These numbers were developed in 2007 for America. Every American born will require 3.7 million pounds of minerals, metals, and fuels in their lifetime. We need to produce natural resources. We already do it in a safe and productive way. We follow the regulations, we do it right. I listen to people, well, those smokestacks, all the smoke coming out of those stacks. I said, you bother to think, that's not smoke, that's steam. Cooling towers, scrubbers. We know how to do this. We've been doing it for years, and we're very good at it. Let us do our jobs. Let us continue on. Let us provide a high-paying wage for our families, just as everybody else does.
Using a variety of energy solutions and producing it here on American soil not only is the most cost-effective option and produces high-paying jobs for people across the country, but it also ensures the cleanest, most environmentally friendly practices are being followed that we cannot control in other countries. America needs energy independence.